All right, great. Well, thank you all for being here. I am sharing my screen. I want to make sure that you all are seeing that. Kaylin, is that showing up all right?
It looks great.
Okay, excellent, excellent. All right, well, welcome everybody. This is Top 5 Secrets for Grants Management. What we'll talk about today is I'll introduce our experts. We'll talk about opportunities and challenges, spend some time on best practices, and then talk about end-to-end grant management, and we'll show you one possible solution. Talk a little bit about how we can help and leave some time for Q&A. And as we go through, this session is being recorded. We do have a Q&A box that Kaylin will be looking at. If you have trouble entering stuff there, you can also enter stuff in the chat. So we'll go from there. So I'm really pleased to have some experts on the line with them. We've got Ron Crupi, retired federal CFO, and Greg Arend, who's the CEO of SOAR Partners and also runs a nonprofit himself. And I'm going to go ahead and let them give you a little background on themselves, and then we'll pick their brains for some of that great expertise they have. So Ron, why don't you go ahead and go first? Ron, I saw you, but I'm not hearing you. Well, let's go ahead and Greg, while Ron's...
Can you hear me now, Mike?
There it is. All right, great. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I was muted locally somewhere. But anyway, my name is Ron Crupi. Welcome everyone to our webinar this afternoon. I've spent 38 years in the federal service, ended my career as a chief financial officer at the National Labor Relations Board. In my early career, I spent a lot of time, 15 years exactly, doing grant work within the DC government, which was a federal agency at the time. And I spent a lot of the time at DC doing federal highway grants, NHTSA grants, project related grants for bridges, roadways, highways in Washington, DC. Then later in my career there, I moved to DC Water and Sewer Authority and got to do Environmental Protection Agency grants, EPA grants. And it was kind of interesting there because we were a corporation basically that was owned and run by Fairfax County, Virginia, Prince George's County in Maryland, Montgomery County, and also the district government. So it was very interesting working there, but we did a lot of grant work there.
Great. Thanks, Ron. And Greg, give us a little bit about your background, and I'm especially interested in the fact that you are living that nonprofit world right now.
Oh, I see. You have to unmute the button. It's tricky. Yeah, it's great to be with you all here this afternoon, morning, maybe in some parts of the country. My background was a longtime partner with Deloitte. In fact, one of the partners in Deloitte's federal practice for over a decade, which was frankly just a great time. Actually met Ron there, was my client at one point in time, where of course, Deloitte has one of the largest and best known national advisory services practice in the country. And so heavily focused on grants at that point in time as well, significant more around CDBG and DR types of disaster recovery grants. And you're right, I retired from Deloitte in 2018. And since that time, I found myself smack dab in the middle of nonprofit world. And I actually serve, I'm a co-founder of a nonprofit that we just launched that serves adults, transition age adults with intellectual disabilities that's going after grants. And I also serve as the CEO of the Gatesway Foundation, which is a storied 60 plus year, approximately 60 year, I should say, organization, also focused on adults with intellectual disabilities.
Great. Well, thank you, Greg. So, one of the things that just when I talked with you guys that amazed me was the amount of grant funding that's out there, whether it's federal, local, state, or even private, and especially federal recently. Ron, can you speak a little bit about that of gosh, just how much funding is out there?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of money that is available through grant programs in the federal government. In 2019 alone, there was about 750 billion in grant outlays that were available for a grant award. During 2020 and 2021, when we had the COVID outbreak, there was additional money that was provided through the CARES Act and through the ARPA funding that basically provided additional monies. And ARPA, there was 350 billion, CARES Act, total outlays was about 2.2 trillion. And it wasn't all grants, but there was a lot of grant dollars available. And just during the normal fiscal years, when we don't have any kind of outbreaks of coronavirus or other crisis type activities, there is still a lot of money available for grants.
Great. And Greg, from your perspective, I think you're looking at federal, but you also, as a nonprofit, I think are pursuing some private grants as well. So there's money from a lot of sources. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, there is a lot of money out there. Ron hit on specifically the funding now that's out there from the federal side, which is flowing down. The federal money actually was on ARPA, for example, is an area that we're extremely focused on right now because that money has to be obligated in a very short period of time. And to the extent states have not, states, cities, counties, and tribes, the money went from the Treasury into those facets of government, and then those governmental organizations then are doing flow down provisions down into nonprofit world, as well as some of the as well as the cities and counties that are just spending the money for good purposes on their own. So, and yes, we definitely any given week we are probably submitting at least two submissions per week between federal, state, local, and private funding.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. Kaylin, can you, Ron's got a comment, but while he's going to make the comment, can you show the results of the first poll?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the deadlines for the ARPA funding. Everybody needs to understand that money has to be obligated by December 31 of 2024. So that means all your outlays have to be obligated on a contract or obligated out to other organizations, sub-grantees, sub-awardees by December 31st of 2024. And in addition, all that money has to be spent by December 31, 2026. So it's critical to get that money awarded, obligated, and then spent. So it's going to sneak up on us quickly. You don't get it all done.
Right. So the clock really is ticking, and I think the sense of urgency that a lot of the agencies will have is going to really be heightened by the time those deadlines start approaching. And the results of the poll, I see that we've got a really great distribution between nonprofits, government, some businesses, and other organizations. And about a quarter of the folks here, you've got less than 5, so maybe you're just starting. We've got several in the 5 to 10, and many in the 11 and above range. So it sounds like the folks on the phone here are in the midst of it and taking advantage of this good funding to do good work. And of course, getting the money is great, but it's once you've won it, there's a lot of work that has to be done. And Ron, I know you've talked to me a lot about that. Why don't you share a little bit about what you saw in your past and what are the challenges with compliance and audits and all the rest?
Yeah, grant administration is basically an end-to-end process, and like lifecycle management of each grant. You need to have everything done from pre-award to the application to grant award, ongoing management and final reporting, auditing. You got to be prepared for audits, and you got to be prepared for closing out the grants. And it's very complex. Each grant has specific requirements that must be met. And considering all those requirements is critical in avoiding audit issues in the end. So grant compliance, reporting, the end-to-end process, having a good system of record storage. Back in the day when I was doing grants, we had file folders, and the file folders would hold everything pertaining to the grant. And of course, things would get lost. Costs would be objected to by the auditors. And so it's critical. The process is critical, and maintaining records is critical, and understanding what your grant requires you to do is critical.
Got it. And we do have a poll up with 3 choices on kind of what are the challenges that you on the phone are seeing. So if you take a time and vote, and we'll see what folks are saying. Greg, what are you seeing from your side? Obviously, there's everything that Ron spoke to, but Blessings to Share is a great organization, but relatively small, I think. So, what kind of challenges are you seeing as a nonprofit with the staff that you have and the mission you're trying to do?
Well, I would say a couple of things. And one of the reasons that I'm on the call today is because whenever I started seeing even news articles about, I started even seeing news articles.
Oh, Greg, it looks like you got muted for some reason.
Okay, here we go again.
Yep.
Here's one thing I would say is whenever, again, I'm fortunate enough that I got to spend 10 years working for a great firm and understanding how to pursue federal funds. And for, in our case, it was, of course, federal contracts. But a grant is really no different. A grant is a contract. It's a provision that's going down into state, federal, state, local, tribal, county entities. And so along with that comes very specific rules and regulations, and you just have to be able to follow those. And so, so 2 things. One is, I would say, from a nonprofit perspective, both for Gateway and also for any nonprofit out there, and for Blessings to Share, first thing you got to look at is, if you look at the money, if you're truly going to pursue federal funds from an ARPA perspective, there is very specific guidance that's under the state. It's called State and Local Fiscal Recovery Compliance Reporting Guidance, that comes out of, called SLRF for short, by the Treasury. It's a Treasury Final Rule. The Treasury Final Rule is really crystal clear about what it is that the money is supposed to be used for. When you start seeing news articles about it's too much compliance effort to go after the money, in terms of a nonprofit, I would say that's just simply not the case. If you are a nonprofit who wants to go after this money, there is money that's been allocated from an administrative cost perspective that you are entitled to, and from a recovery perspective. So do not let government officials or other obstacles in your way. If you think that and this holds true, by the way, for the counties on the line and the cities on the line and other businesses, if you think that you have a legitimate reason to go after and pursue those funds, by all means, go after it. Do not let the compliance burdens stop you from doing that. There is help to do that, and resources to help you do that. And so, again, I put my nonprofit hat on now, Mike, for the most part, which is we're all about mission. We're all about getting as many dollars as we can to serve a very vulnerable population, in our case. And we know we must comply, but we are going to comply. And that's why, again, we've reached out in terms of getting additional resources to help us do that.
Great. Thanks, Greg. And Kaylin, can you show the results from poll number 2? Okay. Balancing team workload and keeping track of reporting requirements. pretty evenly divided here. And previously, when we talked with other groups like the Oklahoma Center for Nonprofits, kind of the top three things came up were keeping track of the deadlines, keeping track of reporting, and on the execution phase, understanding if the funds are being used properly. So there is a challenge, but as Greg says, it's not an overwhelming challenge. And, as we've talked with experts, we've assembled some best practices that I think can help you in going after those dollars so that you can really complete your missions. And so we're going to talk now about some of the best practices. This is our top 5 secrets. And so I'll kind of walk us through these, and I'll let Ron and Greg add some commentary as we go. So the first one, really important, is tracking deadlines and requirements. And you go, oh, well, that seems kind of intuitive. It's, of course we've got to do that. But in order to do that, what we found is the best approach is, you want to use a dedicated or shared calendar, because you probably have a lot of different team members who are in the process, who are keeping track of things. Getting everybody on the same sheet of music is vitally important so you don't miss any deadlines. You want to be able to track and report across all your grants in one place, and you want to make that stuff accessible to your team. And then finally, you will be audited. Ron tells me that over and over again. It's not a question of when, it's not a question of if, it's when. And so, internally track your progress and internally make your own reports so that your management team is looking at what's going on. And so that's the way that you can really keep track of all those requirements. And I'm gonna pause here, and Ron, speak a little bit to the challenges you saw in the past, and then I'll ask Greg to weigh in as well a little bit.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Audits are, you might as well plan on getting an audit. As Mike said, they're coming. They're going to look at your paperwork. They're going to look at your documentation. They're going to look at your systems. In my earlier career, we had actually created a division when I was with the DC government that actually did pre-audits of all our grants. So we knew what was coming. So I hired a team of auditors, and they would review all the documentation in the files, make sure that the tracking was right, make sure that our job costing system reconciled, made sure that there was no indirect costs that were charged that shouldn't have been in charge, or administrative costs. And it's critical to make sure that what can be charged, how to charge it, how to track it, put it in order so that the auditors it can be readily available for the auditors to review. And if you do that, then the auditors will have more confidence in what you're presenting, and they'll understand your method, your filing systems, your financial systems, and everything else. So if you lay it all out, have it organized, have it in a structure that the auditors can easily understand, your audit will go by quickly and efficiently, and hopefully there won't be any monies that you'll have to pay back because of incorrect charges to the grant.
Right. And Greg, on the standpoint of tracking and reporting, you mentioned that you're submitting probably 2 grants or more a week. And so I bet that adds up to a lot of grants in flight that you've got to keep track of with your team.
Yeah, and so, for the nonprofits on the call, one is you have to identify the right opportunities, right? You could spread yourself way too thin. So we're really specific in terms of which opportunities we think really fit us the best in terms of our organizations. I think for the governmental organizations that are on, where they might actually be, they might be the recipient, for example, of ARPA money, and then are getting ready to become a grantor down to other entities below them. 2 things come to my mind from my past experience in my professional services world. One is make sure that your documentation and the process that you go through in terms of soliciting, for lack of better words, inputs, and in terms of making sure people know that the funds are available secondly is how to go about applying to them, because the last thing you want is somebody to cry foul that you did not do your job as it relates to making sure people had the opportunity to propose on getting those funds. And then the second thing I would say is in the evaluation process from a governmental perspective is make sure that you're again, you've got that well documented and you crosswalk that back to the final rule of the U.S. Treasury. Again, thirdly, I'd say from the nonprofit side, and I've already observed this in our early stages of some of our government reporting that we have to do, it will change. Just realize it's going to change. It will evolve. And so one of the things you want to do is make sure you have flexibility as a nonprofit to be able to adjust and handle those types of changes. It's nothing new. It's nothing unusual. It just happens to be that way in terms of people asking for additional information about certain things.
Great. Thanks. And Ron and Greg, you spoke really to that next best practice of, organizing your documents, keep the supporting documents well organized, make them easily accessible to your team and to the auditors. And an element of that you talked to me about was creating an archive for grant history from the perspective that every time we have a new grant submission, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We can go back to our records and see, hey, there was a similar set of requirements for something we submitted 3 months ago. Let's see the research that we did so that we can resubmit. So I think that just reinforces everything that both of you said. And the next best practice, and the one that Ron has really hammered home for me, is that you've really got to look at the entire grant life cycle. So we've got the pre-award phase, the award phase when you actually have won the grant, and then the post-award phase of compliance. And you can see the elements of what you need to do to keep track of each of those. In that pre-award phase, there's a lot of work to track the submission status. And Greg, you mentioned a little bit about it. Maybe speak to that just briefly a little bit more of keeping track of all that information of, we're trying to get some money. How do we keep track of all that stuff?
Yeah, you just have to have it's a classic business process that you want to try to automate. It's a, people, process, and technology that are all, whatever we need to do, we need to do it as efficiently as we possibly can. So we need a process that's in place that's clear on communication, and then we need a technology tool that replaced Ron's file folders that is much more efficient and streamlined. You also want something that is and I've helped organizations that are on the government side where they are recipients of these grant applications. And that's the other part. If you're on the government side and you're getting lots of applications, you've got to be able to manage those, monitor those, because one of the things that happens, Mike, is if you don't do that, all of a sudden, silence can be deafening. And if all of a sudden, if you have a nonprofit that's submitting grant applications into a government agency and they're not hearing back, there's not some type of tracking and reporting and feedback system to that nonprofit, that is a frustration and a communication breakdown that really should be avoided at all costs. Everybody's in this together to try to make this country a greater country with the resources that are available through both public and private grants. Great,
thanks. Yeah, and once you've won those, then you've got that award phase, and you really have to start the program up. And Ron, what you told me is that that is so important. You're setting the foundation for execution success in that program startup, and you're the expert. I'll let you just kind of speak to that a little bit for the middle bullet there, the award phase.
Sure, that is critical. Once you're awarded a grant, you need to set up your structure to manage the grant, manage your costs. If you need to set up special codes in your financial system or link your financial system to that particular grant, create a job costing process if it's needed. establish your tracking system and your document management system. That award, if you don't get it straight up front, you're going to have nothing but pain in the end. So this award phase and the setup is critical to the successful implementation and management of the grant down the line.
Got it. Got it. And that down the line is what we call the post-award phase. And that's where you're using and leveraging that good structure that you put in place to have that compliance. You've got a report, you want to monitor and manage the entire grant lifecycle in this phase too, because you're going to look back on the structure that you implemented and make sure you're complying with that. So many required reports, programmatic, financial, and there's other grant data that you need to keep track of as well. And Greg, I think one of those is you at Blessings to Share have experienced this, and you have to look by economic zone or zip code. There's a specific demographic term for that, and I've forgotten what it is, but I know you as the expert can remember it, or Ron can. But there's things that you have to do to look at the impact of your grant on the audience that you're trying to improve. Isn't that correct?
Well, that's right. When you submit the grant request in the first place, one of the things that is usually on there is what are the expected outcomes? What's the expected, and then how do you measure those outcomes? And those are some things that they are very achievable. One thing you don't want to do is, as a submitter, as somebody requesting grant funds, is you don't want to overstate what it is that you can deliver. You want to make sure that you can keep data that you're able to actually report on. And so to that end, you really want to make sure on going forward, then what do you have the ability to report on? Like if it's socioeconomic status, that may be one thing. If it's the number of people that have gone through a particular program, perhaps there's all different types of ones that are. We submitted one this last week that related to an anti-smoking campaign for adults with intellectual disabilities, because their stats are off the charts compared to the other non-demographic around that. So those are things you just have to really pay attention to and be able to report on. And you got to be able to do that efficiently. Otherwise, if it's the end of the month, you got to do the report. If you haven't collected that data during the month, it's too late. It's too much of a burden. So be smart about the planning phase, as Ron indicated earlier. So
great, one thing too is our representatives from DC like to know in their area that they represent. They want to know how much money, how much funding, how many people were affected by these dollars that they pushed out. And they like to tout that when they're running for Congress or running for Senate. So having all this demographic data, having all the location data it is something that is required in a lot of grant programs. So you need to have your process, your systems, be able to track that. Great,
thanks. And the emphasis. Oh, go ahead, Greg. Sorry.
Well, I just wanted to real quickly. I noticed the very last bullet point: respond to audit requests by audit entities and grantor funding agency. I just, for the audience, want to share. This is kind of late breaking news from last week, but the U.S. Treasury has awarded a multiple award contract, meaning multiple vendors, to audit support. So the U.S. Treasury has already engaged or has awarded a contract with multiple parties to go provide audit support. So to Ron's point, if you don't, you will be audited. There's not any question about it. But don't be scared of that. Just get prepared for it.
Yeah, thanks. And kind of the overarching on managing the entire grant life cycle is it's likely that you're going to have grants or grant applications that are going through all three phases at once. And so being able to be able to look at that and understand that entire continuum is really, really important. And then, this may be obvious, but get help if you need it. So especially for the smaller nonprofits or smaller agencies, outsource some of that burden. Don't go it alone. Team up with other organizations, and I'd highly recommend joining your local nonprofit association, like the Oklahoma Center for Nonprofits. And Kaylin, if you could open up poll 3 while we talk on this. And Greg, I'd like you to speak to the outsourcing some of the burden from your perspective and SOAR's perspective, because I think that's something valuable for many of those folks on the phone.
Yeah, we from a SOAR perspective, we saw this coming in that we realized that there was a significant infusion of additional capital by the U.S. government in the form of these CARES Act and ARPA funds and so on and so forth. And so along with those lines, as Ron mentioned, the deadlines in terms of it has to be obligated by 2024. So this is a classic situation where and again, the government has provided for administrative cost relief on this. This is a real classic situation where you don't want to build something for the next 20 years if you're trying to if one of your objectives is to go chase and try to obtain this funding between, it's mid 2022 now and 18 months from now, right? So which is as crazy as that sounds, but so I guess maybe it's more than that, whatever it's 30 months, but it's a short period of time is the point. And so this is a place where you could pull in expertise who actually understand what it means what the compliance aspects are, understand how you get codes, the crosswalks over from your general ledger systems over into the reporting aspects of things. And take advantage of those administrative cost relief during that period of time, as opposed to trying to build something internally that, that's a really significant effort to try to build that internally. So.
Great, thanks. And that really leads me into the last secret and the last best practice, and that's really to use the right system for you. So again, it's really important that it's something that can manage the entire life cycle. And you need to choose a system that'll grow with you. And I like to speak always whenever we're talking about solutions is the Goldilocks principle, right? So if you're familiar with the nursery rhyme, you've got Goldilocks gets lost in the woods. She stumbles across a cabin, and there's some porridge in there. She's hungry. The first bowl is too hot. The second bowl is too cold, and the third is just right. She's tired. The first bed is too hard, the second bed is too soft, and the third bed is just right. So really, as you're looking at finding a system to support you in this effort, you want to find the system that's just right. So it can't be too complex, and it can't be too simple and too basic. So something that's got some flexibility really is what you ought to be looking for. And with that's really where we've built a solution. And so here's an example of something you may want to use. Our objective was to give you a tool that allowed for that end-to-end grant management of the grant life cycle. We wanted to find a way to reduce the costs for grant administration and technology support. So knowing that a lot of nonprofits out there don't have a large budget, how can we make something that's really cost effective? Do something that has automated workflows and approvals, get rid of that manual work, ensure that it's secure. And, one of the things that we thought was really important was have a familiar user interface, something that's easy to understand and interact with so that you can have some greater user and stakeholder adoption. And it's got to be really flexible to meet your needs, because every nonprofit is a little bit unique. Every agency has some slightly different requirements, and so you want to be flexible enough that we can meet those. And that's what we had in mind. As we did that, we chose a particular platform, a platform called Smartsheet, and built our solution on that. And the reason we chose the platform called Smartsheet is because it is the leading collaborative work management system in the marketplace, but it's got that familiar user interface. It allows you to manage your resources. It has some real-time dashboards and portals, that automation. It allows you to really do some project management once you've won a grant. And it has really good team collaboration. And one of the reasons it has that is the license structure allows folks to interact with the system without having to have a paid license. And so that's really, really helpful for nonprofits. It's got a lot of built-in integrations and connectors. And then the thing that Ron always hits me upside the head about is document management. We chose something that you can have integral to it, your document management, so you don't have to have a separate system for that. And so that's what we chose to build our solution on. And what I want to do is I'm going to give you a quick preview very quickly, and then I'm going to show you for a few minutes the live system, just a taste of it. And if you'd like to see more, we can get some time afterwards. But what we built allows us to give you some custom dashboards, so you can take a look at everything happening at a glance, and I'll show you some of that live. It allows for custom reports, so that we can have reports that are giving you the information that you need for the particular people that need it. We've got some forms and easy automation. And again, it's really focused on that grant lifecycle support. And really at the end of the day, our objective is that it helps you prepare your grant applications, track those requests, manage the life cycle, and provides the information you need for auditing and reviews, both internal and external, and those role-specific dashboards. And so before we jump into that, I'm just curious of what folks are using today. Can you, Kaylin, show us the results of the poll? Excel, Google Sheets, some dedicated software, and some others. So, okay, great. You know, it was interesting when we talked with the Oklahoma Center for Nonprofits, we had a surprising amount of folks using manual and paper-based solutions, but not surprisingly, Excel and Google Sheets is always one of the top top choices when we do this. So I'm going to go ahead and transition to show you. I'm going to end this slideshow, and I'm going to switch over to take a look at the system itself. So I'm going to share screen one. And as I talked about, there we go, share. All right. And are you seeing, I want to just make a check and make sure that you're seeing my screen. Kaylin, is it showing up okay?
We see it, Mike.
Yep, it looks
Okay,
great.
great. All right, so we talked about going through the entire grant life cycle, and on the portal here, I've got a couple of images just to remind us what we do in the pre-award phase and what it helps you do. So you wouldn't have that on your portal, but your portal might look like this. So we've structured this to, take you to that first step, which is I got to keep track of my grants and, see what I've applied for and what the status is. And one of the things I love with the platform that we use is the ability to easily create forms. And Kaylin, could you put in the chat, could you put in the URL for the grant inquiry form?
Yep, I just put it in there.
Great. So just for fun, go ahead and open that up. It's going to open up a form that's going to look very similar to this in your browser. Just fill that out and enter it. It'll be just fun for us to take a look at it. But let me back up and say, talk about portals in general. So what we've done is these give a custom interactive view so that you can see the information that you need to see. And we can do it by role, we can do it by department, etc. Here I've got an example of an embedded form. You're going to be able to interact with the form in the chat box. You can have quick links. So this is often really helpful in a portal so that you can go to other sheets or you can go to websites, whether it might be the website with a grant link. You just click on that and this is taking us to the grant management solution itself. I'm going to jump back to the portal. But as we go in, one of the really cool things, again, this is live in real time. And so as we look at the base data, we can keep track of important things. So on your intake process, one of the things that's very important is looking at the workload of your team. And so here we've got an example of grant count by grant writer. So this is a large organization with a number of different grant writers. You could take a look at this to manage your team and say, oh gosh, we've got a lot of them in flight. Ron Smith seems like he's a little bit overloaded. Let me see if he needs help, or maybe I need to start reassigning things to other grant writers. As we scroll down, and as I was putting this, I kind of had these a little bit skewed. One of the things I did that on purpose to show you that we can easily move things around on the dashboard in the portal. And so if we don't like where a widget is located, we can easily move that. Doesn't require any custom programming, just click of the button as you saw here. So here we've got a quick status that tells us, you know, we're out there looking at almost $5 million in grants across 29 grants. We've applied for 2 million. We've been awarded 1.2. And the other metrics that we can take a look at here is by status, where we are in our in the status of the grant, from proposed to working to submitted to awarded. We can look at the approval phase for each of the grants. And then we can scroll down and we can see the grant amount by department. We can look and see the grant amount by agency. And then if we want to deep dive down, we can take a look at a report and see exactly, well, what are the grants? We can have them sorted by different ways and just kind of scroll down to see everything that's in flight for us. And then we can take a look and say, oh, you know, there's a submission. Here's a submission that's 90 days overdue. And so we've got the system that can show us in a smart way that, oh, you know what, there's something here where it's overdue. But if I look at this, it tells me that it's been submitted. So I'm gonna click on this and check and actually see that it has been submitted. Okay, so I know that that happened. And I'm good. Okay, I know that it's submitted. We're okay in that case. As I jump back, I wanted to show you the grant inquiry intake sheet. And so let's go ahead and refresh this. So a lot of you, almost half of you, are using Excel or Google Sheets. And so underneath the bones of the system that we built, it looks very much like an Excel sheet. And so the advantages of that are that it is very easy for your users to interface with and understand. And so they can, you know, as they come to it, it doesn't take much for them to go, oh, okay, I see what this looks like. We can see here there's some functionality that I really love, which is called the highlight changes functionality. So I can take a look and see, hey, what's been added in in today or in the last hour. If I wanted to look over the last 30 days, I could do that. I could see that the road paving was in the last 30 days. There's some functionality that allows us to do things like drop downs. All right, so that makes your data integrity very good. You don't have people misspelling wellness or administration. There are columns that allow you to use email addresses, which is a contact list that feeds some of our automation. And so you can see that we do have the forms that were submitted recently, and we can see that that happened. We can also take a look, and if we want to see the history of any cell, we can see who made an entry and who changed it. And so it gives you a lot of power around the audit histories, or just seeing at a glance what's going on. And so I'm going to go ahead and not save that. I'm going to go back to our dashboard. And again, that kind of takes us through this pre-award phase. Let me scroll down. And now I want to look at the bones, and this is going to look a little big, so don't get scared, but here is the grant tracking sheet. And so in our system, we're keeping track of every single grant here, and going through a number of data points and a number of phases. And so this may look a little daunting. you say, oh my gosh, there is a lot of information here. How do we keep track of it all? But there is a way. And as we scroll here, I just wanted to stop to talk about automation and approval processes. So I talked to you a little bit about the automation that's associated with the tool, and I'm just going to show you a little bit more here. And so there are actually a lot of workflows. You can see those that we have built already, and I'm going to show you a little bit more of those in the next portal. But there is a way to add any workflow that you want. So you can, I'm going to quickly show you some of the templates they have so we can easily build workflows that alert somebody when a specific criteria has been met, like, hey, something's been submitted, something when a specific date, like a due date comes in, automatic updates every week, send messages to someone if they, for example, need to approve something, and even do some of those integrations into your Teams channel or into your Slack channel. So out of the box, we've got integrations that we've configured, and those are very, very easy to use. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move over to the post-award portal. And so as we talked about going through that, we've seen the pre-award, we're in the award phase and the post-award phase. And it allows us to do things like managing the whole grant cycle and giving the information for audit. So in your portal, as I scroll up, again, you would have that same kind of widgets that allows you to see, hey, at a glance where we are. But now here is a report that talks about the automated approvals. And so you can see that we have each of the approvers, and as they have gone through, the system automatically routed it to the next person. You can go in and you can see what's exactly needed. And so if we wanted to, for example, only see director and program manager approvals, we could alter the report to do that. Now, talking about actual grants that have been granted and being able to keep track of all those programmatic and reporting requirements, you can see that we've got early warning of reports that are due. So here is the next report that's due in 90 days. And then we've got an ability to alert ourselves for the past due reports. And so if I go in here, I see, oh, I'm past due on the hockey rink refurb. What's going on? I can easily click on the link and I can see the information itself. Here are my reporting tasks. I can come in and say, oh, my community impact report, is that complete? I can come in and I've got the report right here. So it gets downloaded. I can open that up. And there's my report all in one place. But I can come in, I say, oh, that has been done. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that complete. I can look at my construction report and see that that's been marked complete. And I can go that, hit save. And now I've got things updated back in to my past due reports. And so I still have one that is past due for another project. If I go in and take a look at here, I've got a comment. So I can look at this comment and I see that I'm missing the native species impact study. And so I've sent a message over to Tyler and say, hey, I need that. I can't complete this report until that is finished. And so we've got in one place, we have all of the requirements. We can make a widget for past due reports or any other programmatic deadline. And in here, then we've got the same fundamental metrics that we can take a look and say, well, where are our grants coming by different funding agencies? What's the amount coming in by department? And again, looking at the entire life cycle, we can look at the submissions and the due dates of the grants all in one place. And as we look at these metrics, the thing that we can do with this, as long as there's the data in the data sheet, this could be the grants by socioeconomic group or impact group. It could be by zip code. So anywhere that's data, we can easily configure a graph that allows us to understand what's going on. And I'm gonna jump back to the detail of a particular grant. And so in here, and Ron, I'm gonna pause in a minute and let you comment on it, but we've got the ability to have as much detail as we need or as little detail. And so we can keep track of high-level management data. In this case, the park improvement has a duck pond refurb in year 1, new playground in year 2, and the bike trail in year 3. Year 4 and year 5, we haven't been approved yet, so we don't know what those are yet. But as we come in, we've got the ability to look at the high-level budgetary data. And so we can see what's been awarded, what the project is, any funds remaining. I'm gonna pause here, and Ron, just let you make some comments on how you would have used this back in the day.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Yeah, when I was at HUD, we were trying to create a system that we could leverage and utilize across all 107 programs that HUD had, and we could never make it work. The solution just couldn't fit all the requirements from the various programs into one solution. And this Smartsheet solution that we've developed is basically flexible enough to allow all of your grants, depending on whatever the requirements are, we can make them fit in this solution. So you don't have to have a separate solution for every grant program that you have. This one will fit them all. And to me, I was so excited when I started working on this project and we started developing this, and the flexibility of this solution across all your grants really makes it outstanding.
Great. Thanks, Ron. And in that flexibility, the thing that I would speak to as well is, you can see that there's a standard template that we have that can easily be modified, and it looks a little daunting, but where you don't need to use a field, you don't need to use it. And so we've got all the rows and all the columns that you can take advantage of if you need them. But for those that you don't need, through the reporting structure, through the portals, you can ignore those things that are not relevant to you. So it really gives you that flexibility from whether you're a small organization or whether you're a large organization. You can take the path that makes sense for you, and it's easily configured. So that's a quick overview of what it looks like, and I'll be more than happy to go and deep dive with you after the call. We'll have a way for you to be able to set that up, and I'm going to go ahead and go back to the deck now. So give me a second to switch screens.
Mike, while you're doing that, this is Ron. Having that flexibility to bring a solution to the table that is easily adaptable and is something that can be tailored to your needs quickly. It's not something that's going to take months and months of development to get it up and running. It's a very quick turnaround, and that's what makes it nice as well.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike, I just real quick, as a user of this system, one of the things that, in fact, that it was in my inbox today, I really like the notification system, so that tells me there's an alert that says, hey, you got something coming up, and here's an action item you need to do in the workflow engine. So I just wanted to say, if you're like, we are extremely busy, and we're this is it's a great system to be able to just to give you your alerts that you have something to get done. So
great, thanks. Yep, and that's part of the automations. And I'm gonna try to hold this in front of my camera. There, I think you can see it. So one of the things that I really love about the system and the platform is that this is all available. It's on your desktop, your laptop, your tablet, your phone. And so here is the grant dashboard on the phone. It's it's dynamic so that it adjusts for the screen size. But that means your team can be in the field, they can be on the go, and the information that you need on your grants is there at your fingertips all the time. And so I think that is really, really helpful. One of the other benefits, tremendous benefits of using the platform, let me move this out of the way, is that Smartsheet platform allows you as an organization to do more than the grant management solution. So some of the things that we've seen commonly done by nonprofits and by government agencies and foundations is to actually leverage Smartsheet for things like employee onboarding. Donor management is a huge one that folks have been using it for, project management and contract management. And I'm not going to speak to this slide, but you can take a look at other roles in industries and some of the common use cases that Smartsheet takes care of. And again, the license structure means we're using this platform for your grant management, but you can leverage the platform for any of these other uses that will benefit your organization. And so that is really, really awesome in my opinion. And we've got at Xpanxion, we've got a great team that can help you with that. So we've been building Smartsheet solutions as a team since 2020. We're a Smartsheet Alliance Silver Partner. Our team is fully trained and certified. We've done lots of Smartsheet stuff, premium add-ons, control center, resource management, all these things. If you're a Smartsheet person, you're familiar with. Lots of experience with automations and connectors, and over 1,000 successful projects. Beyond that, we're backed up by Xpanxion. Xpanxion solves business problems with technology. You can see a little bit about us there, and just tremendous technology chops when we get into those connectors and those integrations. If you have systems of record, we've probably worked with them in the past. So just to tell you that we've got a great team that's ready and willing to help you, and hopefully we'll have a chance to do that. So if you're ready to make your grant management easier, let's talk. I'd love to get with you afterwards and explore how Smart Grants, the grant management solution, can help you. Or if you've got a group or a nonprofit association, we would love to present this as well. And so I'm gonna go ahead and end the presentation here, and let's spend the rest of the time with our experts. Let's open it up for questions, and we'll go from there. So I'm going to stop sharing, and who's got the first question? And Kaylin, I don't know if there's some things in the Q&A or in the chat. I'll open those and take a look, but if you can guide us as well.
Yeah, we don't necessarily have any questions at the moment, but we have a lot of people that are thanking you for the presentation.
Great. Let me give it a second. So anyone have a question around how a nonprofit has been using this? Greg could really speak to what Blessings to Share has found and what challenges they have faced. And we've got a question or a comment that says, will we share this presentation at the end? And we absolutely will.
Hey, Mike, there was a question about earlier from an attendee that had to deal with the cost of Smartsheet licensure and that sort of thing. And just wanted to say, because we are again, I'm involved with 2 nonprofits that are utilizing this technology, and this is not an overly cumbersome, overly expensive solution from a from a licensure perspective. This is not, it just isn't. And then the other thing that I would say is to those who are fearful that, oh, it might, and I think Ron really did a good job of explaining this, but is if Ron, in terms of the level of effort to get this up and running, again, what I would say is we have the ability between the functional expertise and the technical expertise in Smartsheet to get this solution up and running really quickly. It did not take, from our perspective, this did not take months. This took maybe 2 to 4 weeks. I can't remember what the exact number was, but it was in that ballpark. And then we just did another Smartsheet application, of course, over at Gateway as well. And a similar situation is these are meant to go quickly, very agile types of environments to get these into. So
it was a question Brian asked about folding, I guess, the cost of the software into a grant. And yes, grants allow administrative costs to be folded in. So it's usually a limit, sometimes upwards of 10% of the grant dollar amount. So you can fold those costs into your grant. So if you're doing multiple grants across multiple programs, then it makes sense to purchase a solution and divide that cost among the grants.
Great. Thanks, Ron. Yes, and the implementation and the affordability of this makes it really easy for organizations of all sizes. So I think that's very encouraging. Well, let's see. Are there any other questions? If not, we'll get ready to close. So I'll give it a 5-second count here. Anyone else have a question? All right. Well, hey, I really want to thank our experts, Ron and Greg. Thank you for letting me pick your brain, and thank you for sharing your knowledge and expertise. For all the participants, thanks for being a part of this. And again, as Kaylin said, we'll send this out afterwards, and I look forward to talking to each of you and exploring how we can help you, and whether that's with the Smart Grants solution, or if you'd like to get some help from SOAR, reach out to us as well. So we're here to help you do great things in the grants world. So with that, I think we're done. Kaylin, thank you very much.